Hello and welcome to the Essex Boys Murder Case part 26. Before watching this video, I recommend watching part 4 onwards on YouTube first, as these videos are all about the key individuals and the murder victims' movements on the day of the 6th of December 1995. A quick mention to the Facebook page called The Real Essex Boys Murder Club. If you're interested, please feel free to join, as there's some great people on there with a lot of knowledge on this subject. So today we are going to follow Donna Nichols, who is parked up on Meadow Road in Rettendon. Now this is where we left Darren Nichols in a previous video, and this is where he's parked up, just here outside this house, and this is where he says he's waiting for a phone call from Jack Wooms to come and pick him up. If you can remember from a previous video, Darren Nichols has dropped Jack Wooms off at the track, and he's driven up towards Chelmsford and seen a petrol station, turned around, he parked at the Wheatsheaf public car park, which is on the opposite side of the road, just a little bit further down. He couldn't get a mobile phone signal, so he drove back down, past the lane, and ended up here on Meadow Road. The time is 6:59 PM according to the phone log evidence, and as I've said before, I've been going on Darren Nichols' second statement with these Day of the Murders videos. So Darren Nichols states, "I didn't wait very long. My phone rang and Jack said, 'Come and pick us up and hurry up.' The phone call lasted 4 seconds. Then Darren Nichols goes on to say he set off and turned right and then went down the road." So what we'll do is we'll follow Darren Nichols leaving Meadow Road after receiving the phone call from Jack Wooms to come and pick him up and hurry up. And the distance from Meadow Road to the farm track is 1/4 mile. It was snowing back then. We know this as well due to the witness statements that was given, and the traffic was moving slowly on that evening. And let's not forget this road here back then, it was more of a country road. Darren Nichols has already driven up this road once already to drop Jack Wooms off, so he knows where he's going. He knows where the track is. Well, we're just coming up to this, finding the track. I mean, just had a thought. I mean, what would you do if you were in Darren Nichols' shoes, if you believe his version of events? Would you park closer to the White House farm track? Would you park off the country lane? You know, in a housing estate, like he said he did? I mean, would you just like pull up at a nearer distance and try and witness what was going to go on? I mean, he says he didn't know that the murders were going to take place, but personally I think that's a lie. I think he knew exactly what was going on. I think most people do if you've read the court transcripts. He's just around this corner somewhere. Yeah, I think it's just, yeah, I think the track's just up here on the right. Here we are. So, as you can see, it's a short journey to the White House farm track from Meadow Road. And I'd say it's about a 3 to 5 minute drive to the track. Now, as Darren Nichols approaches the track, which is on his right here, and he states, "I had to wait for a few cars to go past before I could turn right into the lane." So the time would be about 7:05 p.m. now, and when turning in here at the beginning of the farm track, the Volkswagen Passat would be facing back down towards the Rettendon Turnpike. So basically, when he dropped Jack off, he set up this way, heading towards the petrol station and the Wheat Sheaf pub. And then he drove back down here because he couldn't get a phone signal. And he headed down to Meadow Road, pulled up, and he waited for the call from Jack Wooms, according to him. But he would have turned in this part here, and their headlamps would have been facing back down towards the way he's just come, and which is down towards the Rettendon Turnpike. So when Jack Wooms turns up on his own, Donna Nichols then goes on to say, "I did not notice the interior light come on. I said, 'Where's Mick?' Jack Wooms replied and said to me, 'He won't be a minute, he's dropped something.'" So what we'll do is we'll just stop there for a moment. So according to Darren Nichols' statement, he says that when Mick Steele went back for the gun parts that had fallen apart next to the Range Rover, so what happened then? Jack Wooms shoots them all, as one gun was used to kill all three. The shotgun cartridges came from the same shotgun. As it happened, Mick Steele's gun apparently fell apart. I mean, Mick Steele's gun fell apart just at the point he was going to use it. I mean, surely Mick Steele would have checked and tested the shotgun he had prior to going to the lane to make sure nothing would go wrong at the time he needed to use it. And just at that time he was going to use it, the shotgun fell apart. I mean, come on. I mean, so just after Jack Wooms shoots Tony Tucker, Craig Rolfe and Pat Tate, they walk off together. Mick Steele says to Jack Wooms, "I'm going back, Jack. I've left the shotgun pieces near the Range Rover, and they could be traced back to me, so I'm going back for them. You go ahead and see if Darren's here." I mean, it is possible, and it could explain why Mick Steele took longer to go up the track. And all that planning days or weeks before the murders, and at that split moment of becoming a murderer, Mick Steele's shotgun falls apart. Why didn't he pick up the gun parts straight after the murders? Why walk halfway up the track and then decide to go back for the shotgun pieces? Like I say, it's a plausible explanation, but something just doesn't seem right on this bit of Darren Nichols' statement. Was Mick Steele paying the contract killer for his services? Was there anything in the empty hold-door found in the boot of the Range Rover? Money or drugs that Tucker, Tate and Rolfe had brought with them, and Mick Steele split with the hitman after the slayings, giving a share to Jack Wooms and Darren Nichols maybe. Was Mick Steele discussing with the hitman a time and a place to pay for his services if the hold-door was empty all along? Say, part payment before the murders and the rest of the payment after the slayings. Going back to the picking up of the pieces of the shotgun that fell apart, I'm not convinced with that part of Darren Nichols' statement. In December at 7 p.m. time, it's dark in the UK. Mick Steele only has the interior light of the Range Rover to help him find them gun parts. I mean, it was down that track and it was pitch black. As I've been going through Darren Nichols' second statement for the research for these videos, Mick Steele and Jack Wooms just seemed too calm after the murders. This is why I think it's plausible that someone else committed those murders for them. I mean, Mick Steele and Jack Wilms had never committed murder before the triple murders, and they seemed so calm afterwards in Darren Nichols' statement. I mean, people will always say, what's so hard about committing murder with a gun? You just pull the trigger. Well, that's easier said than done. I mean, the nerves of it all, panning out and how they planned it that night. The moment when the Range Rover pulls up in front of the locked five-bar gate, there would have been a lot of nervousness in case anything were to go wrong at that exact time. What if Craig Roth was going to get out of the Range Rover after pulling up and he decided he was going to open the gate? If that scenario played out, how would the killer or killers have played it out? One at the gate and two sitting in the Range Rover? It could have gone terribly wrong for the killer or killers. If Mick Steele was in the back of the Range Rover that night, he wouldn't have been able to get out without causing suspicion. One at the gate, just about to tell everyone it's padlocked. The other two sat in the Range Rover, one in the front and one in the back. I mean, if this scenario played out like I've just said, how would Jack Wilms be able to pass a shotgun on to Mick Steele to help him with the murders? Who would the killer or killers take out first if this happened? So to me, this luring of Tucker, Tate and Rolfe to this farm trap that night in the dark was planned out well in advance by at least a couple of weeks. And it was not thought of on that day. We've not seen evidence, or should I say phone evidence, to the build-up of these murders. We've just seen a snippet of days of the telephone evidence mixed with Darren Nichols' testimony, making sure he was not involved and had no prior knowledge of these murders. Was there a professional hitman at the scene that night with Mick Steele and Jack Wilms and Darren Nichols? Or could the police have carried the murders out? Maybe another rival firm who wanted these three out of the way. Whoever it was well planned. The gate must be locked. I mean, that is very important. So there's nowhere forward for them to go. It would have been virtually impossible of reversing back up the track with it being such a narrow track and nowhere to turn round. Plus it would have been pitch black in December. The killer or killers also have to realise to catch all three men out, they would have had to catch them out by surprise. So you would have to come from behind to shoot all three. Not the left side, as there's no room to spring an attack. Not from the front or side of the right, but 100% from the back and at the right hand side. So they would be caught by surprise and there would be no time to react to anything. This to me was all pre-planned and thought out very, very well. This is not a rush job. You know, it wasn't thought out on the day or the night before. No way. I mean, that 5-bar gate had to be locked on an evening. So recce missions would have been done prior to the murders taking place. I mean, Jack Wilms' explanation of him being in Rettendon the day before the murders, it is very weak for me. I don't think Mick Steele and Jack Wilms knew about the big footprint a mobile phone leaves and how it can incriminate them in a court of law. When asked by the police about Donna Nichols' car breaking down in Rettendon the night of the murders, Jack Wilms said he never spoke to Darren Nichols after that phone call. And let's not forget, Jack Wilms lives about 60 miles away in Brotford, Ipswich. He gets a phone call from Darren Nichols saying his car has broken down, and can he pick it up for him. Let's not forget about how Darren Nichols got home too, because he was 22 miles away from his house that night. And also, what was he doing all the way from his home that night in Rettendon? I mean, it's 22 miles away. I mean, what was he doing in Rettendon with a supposedly broken down car? I'll tell you why, and it's a technique the police use in interviews. What they do is they hold information back in interviews, which is a good way of catching liars out in police interviews. The police asked Jack Wilms what happened that night in Rettendon about the vehicle breaking down, and he said he received a call from Darren Nichols saying his car had broken down, and he asked if he could pick the car up for him. Jack Wilms said he never spoke to Darren Nichols after this. He just travelled 60 miles to pick up Darren Nichols' car, and that was it. So the police then put to him the phone log evidence of the 6:59 p.m. By Jack Wilms to Darren Nichols via their mobiles. It's like, get out of that one, Jack. We've just proved you have lied. I mean, it's that simple. So the police have just held that little bit of information back, not telling them about the phone call that they had as evidence, the 6:59 p.m. one. They've held that back. They've asked him what happened. And he explains that he got a phone call from Jack Wilms. He got a phone call from Darren Nichols saying that his car had broken down in Rettendon, could you come and pick it up? And then that was it. We never spoke to him again. And then the police put forward, well, we've got a 6:59 p.m. Call that you and Darren Nichols had in Rettendon, and it was at 6:59 p.m, around about the time of the murders. So they've like caught him out there. What I'll do is I'll stop there for today, and thank you to the YouTube subscribers. Hope you've enjoyed the video, and don't forget you can join the Facebook group called the Real Essex Boys Murder Club. There's some great people on there. We've got over 19,000 members now. There's posts going on a daily basis. Thank you to the admins who do a great job of keeping the group ticking over. It's much appreciated. So until next time, take care.